Hello, my name is Vicky Docker, founder of Empowered Change. This is the fourth EmpowerCast, Empowered Inclusion Driving Change Together series. The purpose of these blogs and podcasts is to give our audience valuable insights into all aspects of equality, diversity and inclusion. When we understand difference, we can show the value of all of us, how we can better support each other and listen, have impact and input, all listening to each other so we can transform the world together. Empowered Change offers three main people consultancy services for businesses to provide people development, talent management and equality, diversity and inclusion, both reviewing and creating strategy and implementing training and development. Today, we are going to focus on menopause, and this is a subject that I'm passionate about, raising awareness for women and those going through their transgender journey, as it's very impactful on those going through this change and others that are supporting them too. I gained my menopause champion training through this lovely lady's business who is about to talk with us today. I am delighted to welcome Deborah Garlick, CEO and founder of Henpicked Community, Henpicked in the Workplace to support employers, and founder of the Menopause Friendly Accreditation and Membership. Also co-author. I'm not going to give any more than that away. I'm going to let her introduce herself. So welcome, Deborah. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, Vicky. It's lovely to see you again. And thank you for inviting me for a little bit of a chat today. Introduce myself. I think you've already done the majority of it. Yes, I started the Henpicked community. It was 11 years ago. It'll be 11 years this year, which where does the time go? And actually, it was a community for women who weren't born yesterday. And we were focusing on happiness, health and wealth. But the reality was, as much as I like to write articles and talk about red lipsticks and what makes your eyelashes grow and, you know, along with the practical things that really help us in life, it was actually the menopause that was the trending theme. Every time we publish something on menopause, oh, there they go again, lots and lots of comments. And, you know, I know how passionate you are about what you do. And for me, that was where a little bit of that's where my passion began, actually, around the menopause, because I'm a curious person by nature. And I got to the stage of saying, what's going on here? You know, why are we all struggling in this way? And I think, you know, you've got to do something when it's your first waking thought and it's the last thing you think about when you go to bed at night. So for me, that was where my journey with supporting others with their menopause came from. And, you know, I'd got the website. So, yes, we could publish articles on the menopause, and members of the wonderful Henpicked community came together and we facilitated a meeting around what's your hopes, fears and menopause questions about menopause. So, you know, from that, we sort of understood a little bit more about what was going on and what people were worried about, and wrote the book Menopause, The Change for the Better. With experts from across the whole of the UK, and that was amazing. It was the longest Q&A I've ever seen ever, which was a gift, really, because then we just chunked it down into chapters and said, well, actually, you know, this is the easy guide to menopause, and you know, hopefully a helpful resource in plain English. But for me, I felt it wasn't enough. I could do more to reach more people. And yes, we were doing training sessions in hotels at the time. But the idea to support organisations was born out of probably two things. What can we do to escalate this change? What can we do to reach more people? And on the other part of it was my background, my experience was always in corporate life. You know, that, if you like, the ping moment with the light bulb over your head was actually employers have a responsibility here. And I wonder what employers are doing about this. And I had the pleasure of meeting Professor Joe Brewis who was one of the lead authors on the menopause transition with the Government Equality Office. The report, honestly, Vicky, I think if she hadn't have published that in July 2017, we wouldn't have be seeing anywhere near the amount of activity, because it resulted in headlines that really were grabbing around organisations losing millions every year because bosses don't get menopause. So that was a really serendipitous meeting. And, you know, love the fact that Jo is still the independent panel member, or one of the independent panel members of the Menopause Friendly Accreditation. But my belief in employers, I think, has paid off in terms of impact, because I held the first Menopause in the Workplace conference and invited some employers. And I say invited, I was kind of probably on the verge of being getting some sort of restraining order at times, because I'd be phoning people up and saying, you really need to be here, come to this session. And they'd be going, what on earth about menopause? And I go, you just come for me, and, you know, I'll tell you all about it. And, you know, we've known each other a long time. So all of my connections were well and truly got in touch with, let's call it that. Yeah. And on that day, around about 45 people in the room. And that was a defining moment, because we had employers saying, oh my God, we had no idea about menopause, no idea about the impact it could have on someone. And actually, a few of the employers said this actually makes sense, because I've got people working in my organisation who are absolutely brilliant, and suddenly they're not the same anymore. They just don't seem like they're them. So, you know, they're off the game, or, you know, not really themselves. And we've never been able to say why. So I'd say, when I say about that idea paid off in terms of impact, those employers became the pioneers, the trailblazers in the UK, and they were the first to publish the first menopause policies in the UK. And then went on to inspire and engage with other employers and say, have you thought about this? So kudos to them. I think employers have made such a magnificent difference in the UK in terms of how we think and feel about menopause and getting support in place. Oh, that was a long-winded answer. I'm really conscious of that. But that's sort of, for me, you know, when I say 11 years and 8 years, we've been supporting thousands of employers in the UK. The Menopause Friendly membership and accreditation has 500 members, and will soon be at 100 who've earned the right to call themselves menopause friendly accredited employers. And, you know, this is a moment in time for us all, isn't it, really, Vicky? Because we're the first generation to be doing what we're doing now.
Absolutely. I love your passion and your enthusiasm, and I absolutely share that. I think when I started to look into this for the business that I worked for previously, there were a few, I think Santander was working with yourselves. There were a few banks that were working around this subject, and a few sort of retail partners. And I remember when I started the journey in terms of looking at it from a business perspective, you know, it was so embryonic, and this is probably only about 3 or 4 years ago, and I know you were championing this cause right at that point, and obviously had been for a while, and we did sort of speak to get some ideas as to what could we do, and things like policies, and you know, I'm sure you'll talk about some of these things in a moment anyway. But you're right, it's you know, there's been quite a few tribunals where employers have actually sort of been held accountable, reputational damage and financial impact, you know, being able to support your people and do the right thing, and I think 1 in 10 people leave their business now because of menopause symptoms, don't they? So there's so much, it's so high on the sort of, like you say, the trend and the priority list now than it was ever before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, when you look back on it, we should have probably, and this is something that Professor Jo Brewis and I, you know, if we sort of meet up from a social point of view, we're going, we should have done this 20 years ago. You know, you could see this coming. We were an aging population way back then, but the connection between an aging population and menopause and what might happen in the workplace was never really made. So, you know, we don't have time to wait on this one.
No.
You know, let's just go for it, because you're right. In terms of the benefits and risks for an organisation, it's a win-win for everyone, isn't it? Because, you know, when you look at the original report that was written in 2017, that cites 4 reasons why employers need to take action. One being the demographic case. We are ageing in the UK. The business case, it makes good financial sense for organisations to be menopause friendly. That statistic around 1 in 10 women leave work as a result of their menopause experience is tragic. When you think employers time and time again tell us they struggle to recruit the talent they want. Well, actually, you look after your people and you can retain that talent that could be thinking about walking out your door right now. So that makes sense. Performance, motivation, those sorts of things. There's less statistics back, because this is still early days yet to understand the real impact and the real benefit. But, you know, and you know, so the financial case stacks up. You've then got the legal case. And, you know, there's a double-edged one. I know the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, we supported the launch of their menopause in the workplace guidance. And, you know, that clearly demonstrated, or clearly highlights, the responsibilities of employers and what could happen if you get caught out and you don't do this. And as more and more of us are aware of, actually, my employer has a responsibility to look after my well-being, whether it's the Equality Act 2010, health and safety at work, etc. You know, it's we're seeing more tribunals. So, you know, and we are likely to see even more. There's sometimes a statistic that's quoted or headlines, and it says, you know, there's a seismic shift in the number of employers being taken to tribunal, and that's true, but there's still a small number. So a seismic increase on a small number is still a small number, but nevertheless, it's a trend that's worth watching, because no, you don't win if you get to a tribunal, do you?
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I think it's interesting that 1 in 10 women leaving organisations because of menopause symptoms. I think that's really interesting, because often, you know, the women are sort of like 45, 55 sort of age, and that's where organisations are trying to support women to get into more sort of C-suite positions. And of course, that's a challenge for many board positions to have that equality of men and women at board. So if this is one of the reasons why you lose needs to be on the agenda there as well.
Absolutely. And
so let's move on.
Just on,
go on,
that,
Deborah.
You're right on that, because employers sometimes say to us, you know, I think I've got a hole in my the progression pipeline to get people onto the board, and we want gender equality. But, you know, and you can understand that when you've experienced menopause, I've experienced menopause, you know, if you're experiencing symptoms, you may have family responsibilities, children, caring, and then along comes the menopause, and sometimes something's just got to give. And it's all too often the career. That's not right, is it? But the reason I love best from that original report was the social responsibility case. And, you know, for the thousands of employers we've supported, the majority of them come from not the financial case, not because they're worried about losing at a tribunal. And I did say, you know, you don't win. Well, even if you do win the case, it's cost you in time and money. So, you know, the only way to win is actually not find yourself there. But most employers do it because it's the right thing to do. And, you know, isn't that heartening when you hear people saying, we want to be a great place to work, and we don't think we can be unless we get the menopause on our agendas and get the education flowing. So I'm going to say kudos to all of the employers and the wonderful champions like yourself, Vicky, who get trained up in employers in workplaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting, because a lot of the people in my previous company, when we created a community, and we brought people together, a lot of people who came to those sessions were like, oh, I didn't realise I was going through perimenopause. And I think that there still is a lot of lack of education out there for people to realise that symptoms could actually be perimenopause. It may not be, but it's certainly something that is experienced, isn't it?
Well, yes, and we experience this all the time. I think it was actually one of your sessions. It happened on one of your sessions as well, where you get people coming to the sessions, and because they want to understand what's going on, and then they recognise the symptoms. And they go, oh, I've got that. And that's the first time that the thoughts actually occur to them. And understandably, when you think, we're changing perceptions all the time. And long may we continue and accelerate on that. But when you think that many people associate menopause with a lot older than it is,
yeah,
and that is the thing I think that we are changing now, and and I think the education is absolutely key in this, because people find themselves experiencing it without realizing what's going on.
Well, that feels like a nice link, really, to start talking about sort of there's a lot of different symptoms, but sort of some of the high level symptoms, that the difference between perimenopause and menopause, and some of the common symptoms.
Well, yes, and yes, there are common symptoms, and actually, one of the things that I'm always reminding myself of, and others, is this is a unique experience for us all. They say 3 in 4 of us experience symptoms, and 1 in 4 of us experience serious symptoms. Some of us may not really notice any changes at all. But it's still good to understand what those symptoms could be. And I think, again, this is another area where I'm thinking we're making progress here, because everybody recognises hot flushes, don't they? That's a stereotypical menopause symptom. And, if every day's a school day, what we've learned over this time, and actually since writing the book, I was quite surprised how many symptoms there could be. And there is no definitive list as such, but when you consider hot flushes and the like being the physical symptoms, and then you've got the psychological symptoms, which are the ones that I think are the most unrecognised and can be the most mysterious, insidious, is that the right word? That they can sneak up on you and you don't know about them. But then there's also the long-term symptoms. So when you say the differences between perimenopause and menopause, I would say, rather than looking at it into the different stages, because menopause is a transition which happens over many years, the perimenopause is the one that catches many people out. You might not realise you're in it. You might not have even heard the word perimenopause. But, that can be when it could be hot flushes and changes in periods. Any of the other symptoms can be experienced during that time. Then you've got the 1 day in time of menopause, and then you've got postmenopause. So, probably the differences between perimenopause and, postmenopause is obviously the absence of periods. But periods can be really problematic during perimenopause. And that's when we hear people saying, I used to be regular, and then all of a sudden I'm flooding at the most inconvenient time. You can always guarantee it's going to be when I'm not prepared. But, the symptoms, and you can join me in here and we can do a bit of a generation game thing and see if we remember them all. But the ones that people say affect them most at work are more of the psychological symptoms. So brain fog, difficulty concentrating, anxiety and worry. That's my big one at the moment. Brain fog I seem to have under control at the moment, but I just do not seem to be able to be sitting in a car without jumping all over the place and catastrophizing what's going to happen. It's like a scene from the Fast and Furious, having me in the passenger seat, I think, is my husband's experience. But it's those psychological symptoms, and I would say confidence as well.
Yeah.
The physical symptoms, hot flushes, difficulty sleeping, fatigue, joint pains. The one we all hate, putting weight on. And that's particularly relevant for those of us that might wear a uniform at work. And when you start to understand the range of symptoms, and more importantly, the impact they can have on an individual. You can really start to understand that, what you were saying earlier about 1 in 10 consider leaving, because, you know, if you're experiencing these symptoms and you don't know what's going on, or even if you do, and you're just trying to get through, and you've got this sort of downward spiral of things chipping away at you, and then your confidence might start to go, and then you might not feel like you're up to the job anymore, or you just can't do it all. And, you know, I think that's where the 1 in 10 come from.
Yeah.
So education is absolutely key in all of this.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Great summary there. And you know, some people even experience feelings of suicide, don't they? You know, that which is, you know, a complete shock to people, I think, when they go through, you know, depression, anxiety, and can even feel that severe. So it is something that's worth doing something. I mean, I suppose that sort of leads me on to, you know, if somebody's experiencing some of those symptoms, what would you suggest they do in terms of improving their situation?
And, you know, I'd also come back to what you said earlier, or I don't know if we've talked about it in previous. When you bring people together and you talk to them, and how many people say, "Thank goodness for that. I thought it was just me.
Yeah,
I thought I wasn't
absolutely.
coping with it, and, you know, didn't understand all of this." And I say, if somebody is struggling with symptoms, or actually if they're experiencing symptoms that are getting in the way of them enjoying their life, please do something about it. Because, you know, you don't have to wait till you're on your knees to start sort of saying, well, actually, how do I want to manage my menopause? How do I want to live the rest of my life and be at my best and enjoy my life? You only get one chance. So I would say with that, definitely the education, read up about the menopause, tap into trusted sources, and really get under the skin of what's actually potentially what could be going on. I'd also say keep a diary of how it's impacting you. Because, you know, you can have good days and you can have bad days, and you can forget about, you know, you can forget what was happening before. But if you're actually consciously thinking about actually what's going on for me and mapping it, that's a really solid foundation to understand what's going on for you. And I would also say get help, whether that's from your GP, your healthcare practitioner, whether it's from talking to somebody at work and talking to your manager and explaining what's actually going on for you, and or even at home. Because, you know, you don't just experience menopause at work, do you? Of course you don't. I know that's my specialism, but, you know, it's at home, it's at work, it's in life. And if you've done all of that reading up and started to understand the facts, and you're understanding what's going on for you, that is a great foundation for good conversations. So whether that's with your healthcare practitioner, and don't get me wrong, Vicky, we hear of some absolute heroes, GPs, but then we also hear for a lot of people saying, how do I get this? How do I get the best from this? You know, I keep going. I'm not really getting anywhere. But if you can sort of say, I'm experiencing the menopause, this is how it's affecting me, this is what I've been reading up on, this is what I think I'd like to do. What do you think based on my medical history? Then that is going to be a different structure. And I think the biggest top tip of all is not all doctors or GPs or nurses have been trained up on menopause. So when you make your appointment, ask who has and make sure you're booked in with them.
Yes.
So that's a good structure for a healthcare conversation, but also it's a good structure from for a line manager conversation as well, because you can say, I'm experiencing the menopause. This is how my symptoms are affecting me at work. This is what would help while I get my symptoms under control. I'm also talking to my healthcare practitioner, and then continue that conversation. So yeah, it's good to really tap into that, or even at home. I could probably ask you, how did you broach the conversation at home?
I mean, at home it was quite interesting because I was having the hot flushes and like the night sweats, and then you know, from a working perspective, the brain fog, I remember being in one meeting, and I was about to start talking about something with the whole team, and it just completely went, and it felt like a tumbleweed sort of went past as I was trying to regain what was my thought process, and as hard as I was trying to remember, it was not coming back to me. And I remember even times talking to my dad and my stepmom about, you know, that thing you have at Christmas and it's a cake. I couldn't think of the word Christmas cake. You know, and you just think, am I losing the plot here? And certainly I was very lucky with my husband, who sort of like was very supportive. And because I'd been through some of this training with yourselves, it gave me the ability to actually phone up the doctors and say, who is your specialist around menopause? And the doctor that I spoke to was fantastic. He was really, he spent half an hour just talking with me about my symptoms and what were the options, which was really helpful, because I'd had some concerns around HRT because of the sort of the myths and so on, and that would be good to talk about, because I was very cautious about taking HRT for all of the sort of like historical things that had been said, but I was very curious about it. So I suppose that would be good to sort of get your view about HRT and dispelling the myths, and what your views are about that and how people can get advice.
Oh, do you know, it's still one of those foggy areas for people, isn't it? And actually, so there are so many myths about HRT, and you know, sometimes I see things and I think, you know, you're using research there that's pretty Old Testament. There is so much, so many different options that are available to us now. So I would say from a personal perspective, I take HRT, have done for a long time, and it was my saviour. And I wish somebody had have told me about it a year earlier, when I was really struggling with, or when I started to experience the symptoms. So I'm pretty pro HRT in terms of, you know, for me, from anybody else's perspective, we're all unique in our symptoms. Yes, we're all unique in our personal philosophies. Some of us might want to take it, some of us might not want to, some of us may not be able to from our medical history. Yes. But again, I would come back to get the education from the trusted sources on this, because, you know, I still read headlines about the dangers of HRT, and very much based on research that was done on old products back in 2002. And you just think, it's not helpful. We have today a significantly different range of products. HRT, I sound like I'm saying boot 3 for 2 here, don't I? When I'm talking about products. But when you think, you know, the different brands that are available, the different delivery methods, tablets, patches, gels, sprays, the body identical products that are available now. You know, I do a happy dance every time I see a new one come out, because not all HRT suits every individual, but you can try a different one. Doesn't mean to say that just because that one didn't work for you, another one wouldn't. Sometimes it takes trial and error. Yeah. So I would say, you know, if you can sort of keep an open mind about HRT, read up on it. And I don't know, maybe you did the same thing as me. When I got my first HRT prescription, I went and got the HRT, but it sat on my bedside cabinet for a month before I dare pop the pill. And it was like, or, you know, start it, because I thought, I'm still not sure, you know, logically, you know, reasonably intelligent. And I was kind of like, I've read up on it, but in the back of my mind is still one of my aunties that were going, that'll give you breast cancer. And it's like, it almost like it was just stuck in there with her voice. But actually, I'm glad I tried it, and I'm glad it worked for me, and it does work for so many people. So, you know, it's a keep an open mind on this one. And, you know, a lot of the myths that we hear, and there are many, actually are entirely myths.
And the good news is last year that the government changed that you could actually pay, was it £20 or the equivalent of 2 prescriptions, and you could get a whole year's worth of your HRT just for that one cost, because people previously were paying every single time they got the prescription, weren't they?
Yeah, I think that was brilliant. I'd like to see them doing more comms on it.
Yeah.
Because very often when we're running our training sessions, we're finding ourselves promoting that. Is that the right way to say it? You know, thank you very much. Was it the AARP for that one? But please do tell everyone, because and this is an important one, isn't it? You know, it's we at Henpicked, our philosophy is everybody needs this education. Everybody needs access to support. And for some people, financial barriers are a problem. And I think one of the first organisations I was working with, it was a union rep that had said, that was telling me about the individual's experience, and she was she was in the cleaning crew, and she'd had to make a choice. The HRT was working for her, but she couldn't afford it. So she'd had to stop taking it. And I just thought that was tragic, because, you know, she'll be struggling in her life, and she had found something that had worked. But you know what? Put food on the table, pay the bills, or take HRT. It's a hard choice. So I think that one was pretty seismic. I'd just like to make sure everybody knows about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people don't know where to go, I mean, you can Google it. I think it's on the NHS website as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw a poster as well in one of the pharmacies, and I was thinking, oh, that's very good. So yes, do get information on that. Do sign up for it. I've got one. I've lost my certificate, so I bought that, and then this is a complete brain fog moment, isn't it? I bought it. Can't remember what I did with it, and so I'm still paying for it. But you know, it's what can I say? I've never got time to go and look for it. But it's really, really worth it.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on there about information and where people can go to get information. It's not just about the person who's going through perimenopause, menopause, or even past, you know, menopause. You know, it affects both cisgender women, it affects transgender women, those that have transitioned, family, friends, managers, so many people. So where can people go to get information to help them?
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because I think that's something that has been another progress area. Because, you know, back in 2016, 2017, we heard women. We still see 51% of the population are affected by menopause. And it's like, do you know what? That's not true. This is a fully inclusive subject. I know that's your specialism. This is a fully inclusive subject. Everybody needs to know about it. And, you know, 51% of us might experience it firsthand, but the others through their relationships. And how many times have you heard, say, for example, all right, a man was saying to me, how do I talk to my wife about this? You know, and for them, they'd come to the education session, and you know, they were in the place of what can I do to support? And you know, have had somebody saying, you can only ask, is everything all right, and can I do anything, so many times, and have your head snapped off. So it's really empowering for people, whether it's a partner, friend, family member. And I love it when people say, I'm coming here today so I know how to support my mum. And I think that is absolutely awesome. Everybody needs to know about menopause. And Vicky, what we're doing today is helping us today, but won't it be nice when everybody goes, yeah, of course I know all about menopause.
Absolutely.
You know, the generations coming up behind us will benefit from this support as well. But back onto the inclusion thing, you know, if you take the word menopause out of this and consider, as human beings, from the day we're born to the day we die, our hormones change. For many of us, that might be menopause, but it could be gender confirmation, that somebody's hormones are out of balance and they start to experience symptoms. It could be as a result of certain illnesses. So say, for example, some cancers are treated either with hormones, or alternatively, hormones are blocked. So that can trigger symptoms. And so many people, and you know, I keep often reminding people, you know, when you see the phrase menopause is a natural transition, I go, it's not for everyone though, is it? You know, because you've got those that experience surgical menopause, and everybody's heard of a hysterectomy or maybe an oophorectomy, and they can be experiencing more problematic symptoms. But then, you know, you've got people that experience breast cancer and other conditions. So the more we start to sort of think about it in terms of, we're humans, we all survived puberty, but that those hormones changing through our lives, we all need to give ourselves the awareness, the understanding, and support ourselves through whatever it is that we're experiencing at those fluctuating hormones, and treat each other with the respect of just a human being.
Absolutely. Thanks, Deborah. So tell us a bit more about your business and what solutions that you offer.
Well, in terms of our passion, what we do every day, what gets us up in the morning, is actually supporting employers. And so I am in awe of what employers do. It's such a privilege to be able to support employers. And I guess, you know, if I go back to the original curiosity and the thing that was making me think, actually, this is a bit strange, what can we do? The outcomes I see making a difference to people's lives for the better is absolutely what we want to see happening here. We're passionate about everybody understanding all about menopause, and those that need it get the right support. And so, yeah, you know, if you start from that perspective, what does that look like? Well, we do, as you mentioned, lots of training, whether that's in person or online or e-learning or digital. Whatever it is, because all organisations are unique as well, and they'll all get the message across in a different way. Or whether it's being a member of the Menopause Friendly Membership, which is a programme that takes people through what they need to do, the things that will make a difference, and then they can achieve accreditation. Yeah, so any of that, or you can always tap into Henpicked Menopause Hub for lots of free expert resources. So that's a little bit more about what we do. But in all of that, what I would say is maybe sometimes I make it sound a little bit too easy, because we're talking about a subject that is sensitive, there's been taboo for a very long time. And it takes time to change hearts and minds. It takes time to change culture. This is absolutely not about publishing a policy and sticking it on your intranet and assuming that by osmosis everybody gets it. That's not the case at all. So those organisations that achieve the menopause friendly accreditation can demonstrate the change in their culture. They can demonstrate how they've normalised the conversation in their workplace and got people talking about it, that they've upskilled people that need to be upskilled to have confident conversations. And they've looked across the workplace, whether that's the physical assets of, you know, the temperature control, the showering, the facilities, or the workwear, and talked to their colleagues about it and taken away any barriers that might make symptoms worse, or asked a really powerful question like, how can we help you? And implemented those changes. But it does take time. And as you said earlier on, you don't always know you're experiencing this, and it's so easy to flick past something when you've got so many emails coming out to you or so many things on the internet. You might be on holiday. You know, you're going to miss things. So it needs that constant drumbeat of activity until you can say, yeah, that's it, we've done it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And keeping people talking is absolutely key. Making sure managers have that training and know what they can do, and signposting, and having people like menopause champions and ambassadors, having communities where you have like committees or networking within your business around the subject, all of those things, and availability to fans if you're getting hot sweats, and all of that is simple things that businesses can do to change that culture. And I think you're absolutely spot on. So where can people find you, Deborah, if they want to come and find out more about Henpicked or how to become a menopause friendly accredited company?
Well, I would say for Henpicked, free menopause resources, just type in Google Henpicked Menopause Hub. It'll all come up, and there's loads in there. For menopause in the workplace, there's the website menopauseintheworkplace.co.uk. And there is menopausefriendly.co.uk. Or you can always email us at menopause@henpicked, and then whatever you need, henpicked.net, and then whatever you need, somebody will get back in touch with you. And that's for us in the UK. But of course, as you know now, the fantastic team in Menopause Friendly Australia, Menopause Friendly New Zealand, the teams in the US, you know, anybody can get in touch with us, and we'll make sure we signpost you in the right direction.
Fantastic. You've given so much information and I really appreciate your time. Are there any other points you want to make before we sort of wrap up today's session?
Well, I'd probably end on there because you know, it's a bit of a school report, isn't it? You know, I'm often thinking, what more can we do to escalate? But, you know, the UK's made significant changes in this short period of time, and significant progress. I always tip my hat to the employers. And I think, how do we keep that going? If you've been doing this in your organisation, if you've been an individual that's been courageous enough to talk about menopause where it's not being talked about, then thank you very, very much. And if you haven't started your journey, why not?
Absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Deborah, very much for your time today. Really appreciate your insights. Thanks to everybody who's listened to this as well or watched it. And we'll see you for the next EmpowerCast. Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks, Deborah, especially.
Thank you.